A factory worker gives birth to a child with an unusual physical feature and struggles with the decision to raise him alone or hand him over to opportunistic specialists. In an office, Katie talks to a social worker about her inability to contact the father of her baby. She says it's been a week since she last spoke with the man, her coworker at the factory, and she believes he might have returned to his hometown in Spain. The worker points out that she is 3 months behind on rent and suggests contacting the authorities to file a marital abandonment case against the father. Desperate, Katie asks if it's possible to place the baby in temporary care for the time being. However, the worker explains that applying for temporary care is a lengthy process, encouraging the woman to take some time before making a decision. Several months earlier, the woman's daughter, Lisa, enters her room to open the curtains and wake her up. When the girl tells her to get up so they won't be late, a drowsy Katie says she doesn't want to go to work. Later, the girl prepares breakfast by heating up milk on the stove. At the dining table, Lisa asks her mother why she said she didn't want to go to work today. Katie then explains that there are days when she feels like that. Minutes later, they head to school on the woman's scooter, and after dropping her daughter off, she tells her she'll pick her up at 5 p.m. At the factory, Katie screws the lids onto plastic containers at her station. Suddenly, she sees the new employees on a tour of the facilities, and she shyly looks away when one of the men stares at her. During lunch, her friend Odile turns to look at the man, Paco, and comments that he's not that attractive. Outside, as the woman sits on a bench to smoke, the new employee introduces himself. Later, they make love in a bathroom and leave separately to avoid suspicion. Upon returning to the station, the boss scolds Katie for being late. She then lies, saying she was in alley B, but anxiety and the fumes cause her to faint. That night, Lisa waits outside the school, and when her mother finally arrives, she apologizes profusely for being late. After Katie tucks her into bed, her daughter asks her to leave the hallway light on because she's scared. The woman complies and assures her she has nothing to fear because she's with her. In the living room, the mother turns the couch into a bed and smiles, remembering the intimate moment she and Paco shared earlier that day. The next day, the man waits for Katie after work, and she explains that what happened between them yesterday was an accident because she never sleeps with men she's just met. To her relief, he tells her that he's not usually like that either. That night, the woman tells her daughter she has to go to bed because she's going out to dinner with a friend. Upset, Lisa returns to her room and furiously throws her doll on the floor. Later, during her date with Paco, Katie shares that she no longer speaks with her daughter's father because he didn't want to have her in the first place. She then learns that the man was once married when he still lived in Spain, but it didn't work out. After the date, the woman takes him to her house and they make love. As she strokes his chest, he asks her if she doesn't mind all the hair, and she replies that she does like it. The next day, Lisa sees her mother with the unfamiliar man in the kitchen and, instead of introducing herself, she runs back to her room. Katie follows the girl and calmly explains that Paco might live with them from now on and that they will be a new family. The girl boards the bus to school and sees the couple about to pass by on the scooter. However, when she taps on the glass to get their attention, they don't see her. Months later, the boss informs Paco that his neighbor called and said Katie is on her way to the hospital to give birth. In the waiting room, Lisa tells the man that she would like to name her little brother Ricky. When the mother finally wakes up, she gazes lovingly at her newborn, Ricky. Days later, Paco surprises his girlfriend with the changes he's made to Lisa's room so the children can eventually share it. While they are having dinner, the baby starts crying, so the mother attends to him. Paco says they can feed the baby after the meal, but Katie wants to do it right away and orders her daughter to join her father at the table. Upset, the girl says that man is not her father, but obediently eats her chicken anyway. The next day, Lisa sees Paco talking to a woman outside the apartment. To avoid being seen, she quickly runs inside the building. In the apartment, the mother asks her daughter to bring her purse so she can check her lottery ticket. Seconds later, the man arrives, and Katie asks where he's been. He immediately complains that the baby is crying, which prompts his girlfriend to remind him that he promised to help take care of the child. Paco responds that they already agreed he would work nights so that there would always be a parent at home with Ricky. While the couple argues, Lisa rocks her brother in her arms and feeds him. Later that night, the man apologizes for earlier, and the woman asks if he has changed because of the baby. He jokes that it's she who has changed because now the baby gets all the attention. Then, Katie says her maternity leave ends tomorrow and that things will go back to the way they were before. The couple kisses. The next day, Paco hears Ricky crying, so he prepares milk in the kitchen. Then, he changes the baby's diaper and puts him down for a nap in the crib. That afternoon, the mother and daughter return to find the man sleeping on the couch with the baby in his arms. While Katie gets Ricky ready for his bath, she calls Paco into the room and shows him the bruise on the baby's shoulder. She says it wasn't there that morning and asks if the man dropped him. Confused, he swears he didn't but reasons that he might have accidentally knocked the baby's back against the crib. Later, while Paco works the night shift, a worried Lisa asks her mother if Ricky is going to die. Katie discourages her from thinking such nonsense and tells her to go to bed. Then, when the baby starts crying, the woman checks his back and, to her surprise, notices that the first bruise has turned into a lump while another bruise appears on the opposite shoulder blade. The next day, Katie confronts the man because she believes he lied about hurting their son. Offended by her accusation, Paco throws the apartment keys on the floor, puts on his jacket, and leaves without telling her where he's going or for how long. Seconds later, Lisa asks her mother if the man is gone, and after she confirms it, the girl hugs her. One day, the girl hears her brother crying from the living room. She then pretends she's treating the wounds on the baby's body, acting them out on her doll. When Katie returns from work, she asks the girl to bring Ricky from his crib so they can feed him. However, Lisa exclaims that the baby is nowhere to be found. The woman goes to check the crib, but all she finds are bloody footprints on the mattress. The daughter swears she never opened the window and that no one came in while the mother was out. Suddenly, they hear cooing and finally see Ricky on top of the wardrobe. The mother asks her daughter how he got there, but she doesn't know. Katie tries to reach the baby to safely bring him down. However, the restless baby slips from her arms and falls to the floor. To their surprise, they see two wings, similar to a bird's but without feathers, flapping on Ricky's back. Later, they wash the blood from his limbs, and the woman hopefully comments that the wings will soon fall off. After the bath, they make sure the baby doesn't fly away by securing a blanket over the crib with clothespins. The daughter points out how much it looks like a cage, so the mother explains that it's to keep him from getting hurt. Then, Lisa asks if they'll take her brother to the doctor, but Katie thinks it's better if no one else knows. During dinner, the woman reminds the girl not to tell anyone at school about Ricky. Before bed, Katie considers calling Paco, but ultimately decides not to. A week later, the mother measures the baby's wings and notices they've grown 3 more inches in length. She and Lisa then try to tape the limbs down, but it doesn't work. The woman then decides to cut holes in the baby's shirt so the wings can come through, making him more comfortable. In the living room, they let Ricky fly a few feet above the couch and clap with delight. Over the next few weeks, the baby's wings grow even more and sprout brown feathers. One day, Paco waits for Lisa outside the school to ask how his son is doing. Remembering her mother's advice, the girl says her brother is fine but doesn't mention the wings. Meanwhile, Katie goes to the library to ask for a book about bird wings. Later, she heads to the market to measure a chicken wing to estimate how large the baby's appendages might grow. When she returns to the apartment, she asks Lisa to help pad the sharp edges in the living room with cushions and place pillows on the floor. They then put knee pads on the baby's legs, wrap his torso in foam, and place a lightweight helmet on his head. Finally, they allow the baby to fly, and when he gets too close to the light, Katie tells Lisa to turn it off. Suddenly, Ricky crashes into the glass window and falls to the floor. Fortunately, he lands on the cushions, but the girl notices a wound on one of his wings. Minutes later, while the woman treats the injury, the daughter mentions Paco. However, Katie says she no longer thinks about him, especially now that her son has wings. That afternoon, the mother realizes she matched 5 numbers in the latest lottery draw. The next day, they collect their €2,000 prize, and the woman kisses the baby for bringing them good luck. At the supermarket, the mother and daughter step away for a moment, and when they return to the cart, they discover that Ricky has taken off his jacket and is now flying around the store. Desperate, they chase the baby down the aisles while the other shoppers, astonished, watch in awe or pull out their phones to record. Later, the police clear out the store and bring in ladders to catch Ricky. After Katie suggests turning off the lights, the baby hovers near the refrigerated section, as it's the only area still lit. Finally, an officer grabs the baby, and before people crowd around him, Katie quickly retrieves her son. At the hospital, the mother says she doesn't know if she'll be able to recover from losing Ricky after already losing Paco. So, Lisa sits beside the woman and assures her that she'll always be by her side. Eventually, the doctor explains that he spoke with his colleagues and veterinarians, and they all agreed that they are dealing with an unusual case. Katie fears they might treat her son like a lab rat, so the doctor emphasizes that they won't do anything without her consent. When the man asks if the baby's father has any notable characteristics, the woman mentions that he is quite hairy, but the doctor says that's not a factor. The doctor learns they keep Ricky in his crib, leading him to ask if she thinks her home is a place where the child can thrive. However, despite his reasoning on why he believes the baby needs to be hospitalized for his own good, Katie insists on taking him home. Due to the group of reporters at the main entrance, the doctor takes the family to the garage so they can catch a taxi without being harassed. Outside the apartment building, curious neighbors and journalists chase the family, so they climb the stairs as fast as they can. During dinner, they watch a news report about Ricky, with neighbors and co-workers sharing personal information. Since the only footage of the baby the station obtained were cell phone videos, some people believe it might be a hoax. Suddenly, they hear the baby crying, but when Lisa gets up to check on her brother, Katie tells her to leave him alone because everything that happened is her fault. The next day, the baby's cries wake up his sister, who then removes the blanket over his crib so he can fly to the mattress on top of the wardrobe. Suddenly, the doorbell rings, and the girl lets Paco into the apartment. After the initial surprise, Katie tells her daughter to go to her room so she can talk to the man. He says he saw them on television and asks why she never told him about their son. The woman apologizes for accusing him of hurting Ricky, and then they share a kiss and make love. Afterward, she asks where he has been all the time they were apart. He says he went to Paris to work in a restaurant washing dishes and doing plumbing jobs. She wonders if he was with other women, and he assures her it was nothing serious. He adds that he came back because he missed her and the kids. When the father sees his son flying around the room, he claps in amazement. Suddenly, the agitated child loses control and injures a wing. Worried, Paco thinks the child needs professional help because he is not safe in the current living conditions. However, Katie reminds him that he is their son, and whatever she decides will be done. Later, the doctor tends to Ricky's wing in the living room and says that although it was a minor injury, the next one could be much worse. He points out that the baby is growing up in a hostile environment, confirming Paco's concerns. Then, the doctor shows them an X-ray and explains that the baby's wings are growing from his shoulder blades. He says they can perform surgery to remove them, but it will be quite painful. The father asks what will happen if they decide to keep the appendages, and the older man, worried, says that the child could wither away without proper professional care. That night, the curious sister tries to cut off Ricky's wings with a pair of scissors. Suddenly, she hears Paco about to enter the room, so she rushes to her bed and pretends to be asleep. Then, she watches as the man lovingly caresses the baby's wings through the bars. Later, Paco suggests letting a trusted journalist film their son in exchange for money to fund his care, especially since the woman seems determined to reject the doctor's help. Katie scoffs and asks if the only reason he came back was to make some money off their son. He then reminds her that he left because she accused him of hurting their child and hopes she trusts him enough to know that he only wants what's best for their family. The next day, they meet in front of the apartment building to introduce Ricky to the journalists and photographers. To ensure the baby doesn't fly away, Paco ties one end of a long piece of rope to his foot. When Katie lets Ricky use his wings, the crowd erupts in excited cheers. Fascinated by her son's unrestrained joy at flying high, she unconsciously releases the rope. Everyone chases after the baby, and the mother thinks he is attracted to the reflection in the lake's water. After diving close to the surface, the baby flies towards the dense cluster of trees on the other side of the lake, and they lose sight of Ricky. The parents scream his name, but he doesn't come back, causing the woman to break down in tears. That night, Paco tells the doctor it's all his fault, and he fears that Katie may blame him forever. The next day, Lisa and the man hand out missing person flyers at the busy market. Days later, the hopeful mother hears the flapping of wings near the window, but to her disappointment, she realizes they are just seagulls. After several months, Katie asks Paco if he thinks their son is dead. He admits that it's unlikely he has survived on his own all this time and adds that she will have to accept that their baby is gone. Later, the woman goes for a walk towards the lake, slowly wading into the water. As she is about to submerge, she hears Ricky floating above. She quickly crawls back to the edge of the lake and joyfully points out how much the baby's wings have grown and that he has learned to walk. Then, Katie apologizes for letting go of the rope and explains that she was mesmerized by how beautiful it was to see him fly. As she watches Ricky soar away, she realizes that freedom has allowed her son to thrive, and she smiles. Eventually, the woman returns to the apartment, hugs Paco and Lisa, and tells them that she loves them. Months later, the man takes the girl to school on the motorcycle. Meanwhile, Katie watches them from the apartment window. Then, she lies down on the sofa, showing her pregnant belly.